Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. Welcome. Welcome to the Reader's Corner. That is right. We're in a different part of my room, as you guys know. Not quite in whiteboard area. The camera needs to be a little higher for that. But we are in what I like to call the Reader's Corner. You know, sometimes I'll come over here, grab a nice trade. Thanos Wins by Donny Cates. Definitely one of my favorite stories. And sit over here and do some comic book reading. Things like that, things of that nature. But I thought for this video it might be kind of nice to do something a little bit different, change up the angle a little bit, switch it up, take some of the pressure off, because I kind of wanted to do sort of a market ramblings talk, just a stream of consciousness, a video diary, so to speak. But I didn't really want the pressure of doing it, where we normally film the video. So I figured maybe switching up the camera angle would make it a little bit easier overall. So this is going to be a little bit of a market ramblings, market talk, market conversation, stream of consciousness, talk, about all different sort of topics. Might be a little bit of a long video here, a little more rambly, grab some bags and boards. I don't know, have me in the background. The visuals probably aren't going to be as interesting. So, I apologize if you're somebody who likes seeing me do physical Jim Carrey comedy with like laying on the floor and things like that. But I kind of wanted to just sort of weigh in, talk about the market, state of the market, call it sort of how I see it. I think we're in a really interesting time right now with comic books. Really interesting time. Now, of course, having this YouTube channel, while I am not necessarily a comic book dealer, I'm not a huge comic book seller. I do sell from time to time. It's more of like a spring cleaning for my own collection, making the hobby pay for itself and things of that nature. But I can't claim to be, somebody who is dealing in high volume of inventory day after day. Although having this platform, having this YouTube channel, I do have the advantage of getting to meet a lot of these people and having a lot of conversations all of the time. People constantly reach out to me, constantly email, constantly DM me, talking about different interesting things in the market, reacting to my indexes. I got a lot of insider info from dealers and through a lot of sort of comic industry osmosis. I'm able to sort of soak in a lot of the happenings of the market. So, while some of this stuff is me kind of relaying back to you guys the things that I've been hearing, I do feel like I have a good sense of what is going on. And I think here, May 2023, I feel like the comic market is in what I would say is a healthy spot, a healthy place. There's definitely a lot of demand. I think a lot of the consignment pages, if you ask them, are doing very well overall. I'm not saying that we're making record prices, although some comics are going to make record prices. We've had conversations like this on the channel before. If you're a golden age book, you're almost always guaranteed to make a record price, at least in a lot of the auctions. People are getting good deals out there. People are making good money. We're in a healthy state in the market as far as the demand is concerned. This is anecdotally true. If you tune into any claim sale, on Instagram, you go to any page, you watch some of these auctions. People are selling books, and I think that's because, it's a dance. The sellers and the buyers have all sort of understood like where the market should be. I think that we've sort of found this equilibrium where a lot of the dealers have sort of accepted where the prices for a lot of key comic books should be, and thus now we're in a place where both parties feel like they're getting the proper value. Now, with that being said, where we are seemingly in a good state, I think we're going into con season, right? We're about to, hit a lot of the big cons coming up here, May, June, July, a lot of big shows, SDCC, at some point on the East Coast. Heroes Con is actually coming up in a couple weeks. That's always a huge collector show. I'm going to be going to Terrificon in the East Coast. I'm very, very excited about that. But we're hitting con season. There's going to be a lot of hype. There's going to be a lot of announcements coming for, obviously, what I assume will be, the MCU and the DCU at San Diego Comic-Con. I'm sure that those are going to be, big, massive, reveals of whatever, Fantastic Four, casting, and things of that nature. So we're entering this season, and there is going to be a lot of hype. Yet on the flip side of things, there's still a lot of macroeconomic factors that we have to consider. There are a lot of people on the channel. I hear it a lot. I get the comments. I get the oh, Swaggelhaus, you're calling the bottom, but just you wait. Q3, Q4 is going to be even worse. Comics are going to zero. And I would like to think that I'm somebody who, while I don't necessarily have the doomer outlook, I like to think I keep it pretty level-headed, especially when I try to do the index. I mean, granted, I'm always being a little bit facetious, and I'm trying to be playful and make it entertaining for you guys. But I try to have the most level-headed takes that I can with a lot of the market. And it would be very, very easy for me to sort of come out and just say comic books are going to zero. Everything is going to zero. There is a part of me that thinks yeah, of course, right now it's looking like Q3, Q4 might be financially pretty difficult, in the global economy. And if we're looking at, the index and the seasonality of comics, I mean, I do think that the Q2 timeframe, May, June, July, typically is a little bit higher than the fall Q3 time, which is, August, September, October. I mean, typically, here in the month of May, this is comic buying season for a lot of comic book collectors. At least it has been in the last handful of years. So there is a world where I do see the economy doing worse later on in the year, and that could play its way into comics. I mean, we've made jokes here on the channel before, right? If eggs are all of a sudden, eating up a lot of your budget, I mean, how many Spider-Boy books can you actually afford? So that's something that we have to think about. And it would be easy for me to sort of call the bottom, and just say just don't buy anything, guys. Comics are going to continue to go down. We're going to test 2018 prices and things like that. But, as I do the indexes and we talk about values and things like that, I think we can do better than that. I'm sure, I think we can definitely play this err on the side of caution. And I don't actually think that I've ever encouraged anyone to, leverage their house and go all in on any given month. But I do think that we can do a little bit better and kind of come up with our models and think about it from a sort of methodical approach and try to figure out, okay, is this a good time to buy? Is it now a good time to buy or whatever? And, and if we're thinking about tough times coming up ahead, I do think it's interesting, as I've gone in and looked at different states of comic books, different states of the markets, go back to 2008, housing crisis and things like that. And you look at where the values of comics were then. And if you spend time on GPA to the point where your eyes start to bleed, and you just look at the charts up and down, and you look at all the values, and you look at where things were, I mean, it seems very, very apparent that at that time, yes, comic prices had some corrections, and we didn't see, record prices. But what was pretty impressive with a lot of keys even back then is that the floor values were pretty strong. There were pullbacks, and there were delayed pullbacks, because that's the other thing you have to consider too, where in a weird way, comics can be a little stickier than, say, a stock market crash. It's 10 times easier to, sell your Apple stock when you don't believe in the market anymore than it is to, say, put a, FF48 onto Heritage Auctions. I mean, it's not that it's difficult. It's just that, you can't, the race to the bottom isn't so instant. This isn't crypto, right? Where it's like literally a press of my finger, I can sell my Bitcoin. So that's something that is interesting to think about, that, back then comics did have a little bit of, some pullbacks, some delayed pullbacks in the market, but also the floor values held up pretty strong overall. And that's kind of where, I've been sort of trying to have a level-headed approach with my discussion of where I see the indexes going, where I see the market going in the next, 6 months to a year or whatever the case. And that is, yeah, things could get lower. Things could fall, but it feels like we are in an okay place overall. That's what it feels like. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future. But as far as I can tell, when we're talking about the blue chip, the key books, things like that, they have a track record of doing okay even in these tough markets, even in these tough times. Again, maybe that makes me a dirty influencer. Maybe that means I'm pumping the market. I don't know, but this is just me kind of calling it how I see it, and I realize that I think there are those who are in the comic hobby, that are in the comic market, that, they themselves are so heavily invested in these markets that, of course, they have an interest in wanting to speak positively about it, right? Of course, everyone who is in comics has a vested interest in wanting comics to do well, wanting comics to be going to the moon, everything's going up, everybody has an interest in that. I mean, whether you are somebody who is like an investor or you're just a collector, I have a hard time believing that even somebody who is just a collector doesn't, in the back of their mind, at least crack a little smile, knowing that the comic books that they own have gone up in value, even if you have no plans to ever sell it. I think I would be shocked. Yeah, I feel like you'd be lying to yourself, frankly, if you're somebody who doesn't at least think it's slightly cool that the comics you own are now worth more today than they were yesterday. So everyone has an interest in this. And I think that there are those who probably speak a little too favorably of the market. I get the comments that all the time. Sometimes I do those videos where I talk to the comic book dealers, right? I go to the shows and I talk to the comic book dealers, and guaranteed every single time there's at least going to be a handful of comments that are like, talking to comic book dealers about the state of the market is like talking to a used car salesman, about if now is a good time to buy a car. You know what I mean? And I get what the sentiment is behind these things, but frankly, who else should I be talking to? Would it be more interesting for me to talk to, doctors and nurses about the state of the comic book market? Certainly they would give us an unbiased take of comic books, but for some reason I tend to think that that's probably not what the majority of you guys would want to hear from, right? I don't necessarily think that talking to people not invested in comics is a good value add to whoever is watching these videos right now. I just frankly, don't think that. Now, that said, you don't have to take everything they say at face value. Frankly, I hope you don't take everything they say at face value. I hope you don't take everything I say at face value. At this point, I say a lot of stuff on this channel, and I think I believe most of it. I'm not about to go back and watch all of my tape, to see. But to bring it back to kind of where I was going with this whole point is, I think we're in an interesting point right now in the state of the market. I think things are fairly healthy. I still don't think that we're going to be seeing any sort of record prices soon. Although earlier this week, I did a video talking about the delayed effect of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think actually some of the trending lists, this week's trending list came out, and we saw the other Guardians of the book starting to move. First Nebula, first Mantis, things like that. Now, again, I don't necessarily think that we should be expecting record prices for, whatever book relates to a movie anytime soon. I've had conversations about how I think those sort of things are more correlated to whatever, the macroeconomy is and interest rates and that sort of thing. But I do think that we're in an okay spot. I do think it's possible that later this year, prices correct maybe again, maybe a little harder, maybe a little more, especially if we are looking at certain grade levels. I think that that's something that, maybe I don't do a good enough job explaining and emphasizing, is the values of comics based on grade, because there are so many opportunities to buy low grade versions of even key books. And any given sale, any given day, there's going to be those price consolidations and things like that, where a 5.0 might sell for less than a 4.0. And in those windows of grade, the reason for that is maybe the 5.0 had a weird writing on the cover, or maybe the color of the cover was faded, and the 4.0 actually presented better. because the 4.0 cover was perfect, but there were like huge color breaks on the back cover. You know what I mean? So those are the things and the flaws that you're going to see, especially in that low grade end, and that's what's going to make that side of those markets so much more volatile. Versus, when you start to get a Silver Age book and you're in the 8.0, 9.0, whatever range, I mean, the aesthetic flaws that would prevent someone from wanting to buy that book goes significantly down at that grade level. So those grades, I think, tend to be a little more consistent with their values. But I do think that it is possible that later this year we do see more pullbacks in the future. But sometimes with the people that are kind of negative about the state of the hobby, negative about the future of movies and pop culture, while I do sort of understand a lot of the arguments, and don't get me wrong, like I'm not somebody who thinks that the MCU is operating as good as it used to be. I certainly don't believe that. But I also have a hard time believing that whatever it is, 4 years from now, when are we going to get like Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars? I have a hard time believing that 4 years from now, when we get to Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, and you have the Avengers movie coming out that summer, that our comics are going to be less valuable. You know what I mean? Let's talk about Avengers 8 for a second. First Prince of Kang the Conqueror. I realize that there's a lot of, Jonathan Majors, situation and this and that, but, maybe, I don't know what's going to happen. Whatever happens, I think that they're already kind of inferred that they're going to go with Kang no matter what. They'll just recast the actor. So let's table that. But I have a hard time believing that when we get to those movies and the hype factor is there, that the comics will not be 10%, 20% more valuable than they are today. I mean, it just, even, just outside of anything with pop culture, outside of anything movie related, do we not think that the macroeconomy will be in a better place in 4 years from now? I mean, I have to think it will. I mean, maybe it won't. Who knows? But given the history of bear markets and things like that, I think it's safe to assume that by the time we get there, things will be better. And therefore, trusting the process, sticking to the plan, sticking to the belief that the market will be doing better at that time is likely a better outlook. Now, I know that this video has been going on a long time and I'm just kind of rambling. I'm sure there's probably nobody watching anymore, but I'll just kind of finish out with this just because I kind of wanted to spew a bunch of thoughts. I think now where we are, given the negativity, given that the market has corrected, given that people have soured on pop culture, given that, a lot of people have checked out of comics, and that, even for me, just as someone who, has this YouTube channel, even the excitement, even the drama, right? Like, even the drama's not as good as it used to be, right? Like, people aren't even as excited. Like, where's the acetate gate situation in comics right now? And what I mean to infer by talking about that is that you can tell that while the market is healthy and there is demand, there is a slight bit of apathy, right? I think that's fair to say, right? Like, people are just kind of like, yeah, comics, that's cool, but nobody is like, there's no, amazing fervor, so to speak. It's not at the same level. But even with all that, I think we're still in a place where the opportunity cost is something to consider, right? I think that right now, even if you think comics are going to go lower in Q3 and Q4, and even if you think the MCU is not in a good spot, or you're not excited about James Gunn or whatever, I know we're leaning on superhero stuff, but, just go with me on this. I still think that we're in a place where you probably should still want to at least consider picking up a few things, in this current market, because of the potential loss that you might have if you don't end up buying in the next, say, year or so, right? I mean, I've made jokes about this before, but you don't want to be the guy who is going into Secret Wars and thinking to yourself, oh man, Kang the Conqueror is so cool. Let me get that Avengers 8. Like, you don't want to be that guy. Like, buy it now and nobody cares about the book anymore. There's a lot of deals out there. So that's kind of where I think we are in the market. I think now is an interesting time, even with the sort of polarizing states where there are people who really are into comics and excited about it, but there's people who really don't care anymore. And we're just kind of, waffling through, the state of the market. But I'm still here. We're still here. You know what I mean? So that's pretty interesting. Anyways, I think that's all I got for this video. That was me doing my Reader's Corner talk. Look at that. Got myself a WonderCon badge. And a San Diego Comic-Con one. It's pretty cool. I think I'm going to be doing another panel at San Diego Comic-Con soon. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. Hopefully you guys kind of enjoyed that. I don't know if you guys are even watching anymore. I don't know. But yeah, you know what? No clever in it. I'm just going to walk away now. Just turn off the camera. This video's over. Like, comment, subscribe. See you all in the next video.